Welcome, Mary Cymru, to the home of Hedd Wynn, Yr Ysgwrn. Croeso I chi. My name is Jessica John, and I work at Yr Ysgwrn in Trawsfynydd in the heart of Snowdonia National Park. And for the past over 4 years, I've been involved in a heritage lottery funded project to safeguard Yr Ysgwrn, this wonderful farmhouse. Now, over the past 100 years, more than 100 years, people have been coming to Yr Ysgwrn as a place of pilgrimage almost. And before Snowdonia National Park bought the property in 2012, they would come and they would visit the family. So, as they were farming, people would just arrive and then they would bring them into their home, sit them in front of the fire and talk about this wonderful place and the wonderful man that lived here. So his name was Hedd Wynn. Ellis Humphrey Evans, what he was born as. Now, Hedd Wynn is his bardic name. Ellis Humphrey Evans was born on this 168-acre farm in 1887. Now, the reason why we remember him is because he was a well-known bard. More than that, he was killed in Passchendaele in the First World War, along with thousands of others that were killed in Passchendaele. The remarkable thing about Hedd Wynn is that following his death in Passchendaele, he won a chair in the National Eisteddfod. Now, chairs have come from a medieval court. Okay, a chair for a bard is something very, very important in Welsh culture. It was through the bard that we had our laws and our customs and any kind of news of the day almost. They sat two away from the king, so that's how important they were. And that's where the title Prifardd comes from. Now, fast forward a few hundred years, and you've got the Steddfod of today, which is held every year. Now, in 1917, the Steddfod was held in Birkenhead. And when they called Fleur de Lis, which was Hedd Wynn's nom de plume, nobody stood. Now, instead of anyone standing or anyone being chaired, they draped a black cloth over the chair. Now, in this instance, the chair became a symbol of all those empty chairs that were across the heart of Wales and Britain and the world following the First World War. And Hedd Wynn himself became a symbol to us in Wales of a lost generation. Now, that's the importance of the man. Now, when people come here to Yr Ysgwrn, they get to learn who he was. Who his friends were, who his family were, have a look outside and see where he was brought up, the inspiration that he was given to write so much wonderful poetry. And so people have been coming here for the last 100 years. Now, the reason why Snowdonia National Park bought it in 2012 was because the last remaining family member was living here and needed to safeguard the place. Gerald Williams, who was Hedd Wynn's nephew, gave a promise to his grandmother that he would keep the door open. It was important to the family that people could come here and learn about Hedd Wynn and the loss of the First World War, the impact of the First World War. And so he decided to sell it, the whole place, the farm and the buildings, to Snowdonia National Park. It's after this that I'm one of a large team of people that then created this movement and this project. And £3.6 million later, I don't mind telling you how much of a grant we needed. We had 3 restored and conserved buildings. We had the whole collection. I'm talking about archives and the bardic chairs and the old Welsh furniture that you can see in the home, all conserved for future generations. And the idea is that we will now be here for the next 100 years for people to come and learn about Hedd Wynn. So today at Yr Ysgwrn, we've had a one-man show called Sioe y Gadar Wag, the show of the empty chair. Now this was performed by our national bard, Yr Ysgwrn.
My name's Yr Ysgwrn, I'm the National Poet of Wales, and in 2017 I was asked to devise a show that would tell the story of Hedd Wynn, the Welsh poet who died 100 years previously in 1917. on the battlefields of Flanders. We've toured this project to Ireland, to Belfast, to Dublin, to London, and all around Wales. But it's such a privilege to bring it home, as it were, here to Trawsfynydd. That the tour began 2 years ago in the village hall at Trawsfynydd, which was where, when the chair came back to the community, the chair was put on show so that everybody could see it. But of course, the chair then found its lasting home here at Yr Ysgwrn, Hedd Wynn's former home. And it really adds another dimension to be performing and hearing some of his words here in the outbuildings that he would have known so well.
In that show, you hear a mixture of poetry, experiences of war. You get an insight into the area, and there's lots of different aspects to the show that give you a fuller picture of Hedd Wynn, who he was, who his friends were, who influenced him. It's just a snapshot, because I realised that it's quite difficult to describe a man and his life in an hour and a quarter. But Yr Ysgwrn really does rise to the challenge. Now, part of the show is also talking about the restoration work that was done here throughout the 4-year project. So you get glimpses of what the place looked like when we arrived and what it looked like when we finished the restoration work in 2017. For the farmhouse at Ysgwrn, we think it was built around 1830. Now, what's quite exceptional about the house is it looks quite different to many other households you'd find across the country in Wales, because we're in a very hard area, if you like. There's a lot of wind and a lot of rain in this area, and when you look at the house, there's these huge stones. It's been built with huge stones, and then when you look up at the roof, there's no guttering, landeri, so the water runs straight off the roof and batters against the front of the house. So the design of the bwthyn, the cottage, is for it to breathe easily. Now, when you go inside, you get a unique snapshot of 1917 and earlier. What was wonderful about this house was that when we arrived in 2012, it looked like it was in 1917, because the gentlemen, 2 brothers of Hedd Wynn and 2 of his nephews that lived here, they didn't bring electric in or running water or even flushing toilets. They managed to keep it as how they were brought up in it. And so when you go around the house, you get this feeling as if someone's just walked out, and that's probably because someone just has walked out. You know, you go into the keggin, which is your kitchen and lounge almost. This is your living area in the bwthyn. You've got the fire going. Now, the fire will give you a croeso, you're welcome. Okay, without that fire going, there's no welcome in the home. That's where they would do all their cooking. You have the grandfather clock ticking away in the background. You also have a traditional Welsh dressel, and you'll see this in many homes across Wales, with the willow pattern plates on that they would have had as a wedding gift. When we were removing the furniture, we removed the clock tywydd, the barometer, and it came apparent that they'd gone around the barometer with 26 layers of wallpaper. And so when we took the barometer off, it showed almost like a fossil, a book of all those 26 layers of wallpaper that were in Yr Ysgwrn. Very large slate stone on the floor, easy to clean, because remember, all the little chickens and things would probably come into your keggin when you were busy. And then as you go into the parlour, now the parlour traditionally was where you'd brought the vicar. You know, you definitely would not be going in there in your wellies. This is where you'd bring the vicar or any influential bards in the area to have tea. Now, when we arrived in 2012, this room had 6 bardic chairs in it. It's not a very large room, it's quite small. Now, the decision was made to have the 5 local Eisteddfod chairs go upstairs into the bedrooms. And so a gadar ddu, the black chair, was the only one then in the parlour. And this meant that people could look at it properly, they could get to it, although not touch it, they could see all the intricate details around the chair. The chair was made by a Belgian refugee called Eugene van Vletteren, and when we take people around the house, it is very much a personal tour. There's no panels across the walls, there's no information on the walls, and we did this on purpose because it was a home when we arrived and we wanted to keep it as a home. Now when you go into the butchery and the butchery pella, which is easily translated into scullery and dairy, you'll see all the different objects that people would have used, the family would have used to make butter, to churn the butter. It's a very cold room. You can see the traditional llechi glass, blue slates that they would have used, and this gives a bit of an insight to how self-sufficient they were here at Yr Ysgwrn. And then upstairs you can see the bedrooms. Now because we've put the 5 chairs upstairs, we didn't have enough room to bring all the furniture back, because obviously when we arrived in 2012 everything was still in the house. So I'm talking about all the beds, some of the clothes, the chests, even false teeth. You know, everything was still in this house, which was such a unique experience for someone working in archiving and museums. And so we've just been able to give you almost examples from the home for you to see as you go around this warm and welcoming bwthyn. Oh, what does the house mean to me? It means so much. I think when you work on a project in a home that is etched almost onto the national psyche, there's so much responsibility to get it right. And we knew all the way through, or I knew they were all the way through, that there was a fine line between preserving what was there and destroying it, of making it too much of a museum. So all the way through the project, I've been very conscious that this means so much to not just me, but so many other people. And it was very much a labour of love, you know, going through, packing the boxes, taking every object, looking at the object and then packing it, making sure that I knew where it was so that it could come back. The responsibility of not wanting to lose anything or damage anything, because there were so many old things, wonderful old things in the home. It means the world to me, and what's wonderful is when people come round the whole site and they say how amazing it is and how well we've done, and it just makes it all worth it. All the hours that were spent, and there were many of them, in the rain and the wind and the cold, it was all worth it. We want to tell our story from a Welsh perspective, the Welsh culture. We want you to come and listen to our language and our stories and our experiences. That's the future that will keep Yr Ysgwrn going for another 200 years, 300 years.